What's the old saying? Red sky at morning. Sailors take warning.
Just don't ever go outside, Brad.
Red sky at night. Sailors delight.
You're still fucked.
What does it mean?
It's bad.
What's the old saying for red sky all the time? Oh my God, the world is ending.
Yeah. I realized when that happened the other day, if you don't know what we're talking about, in the Bay Area and a lot of the West Coast, the sky was blood red for most of the day on Tuesday, Wednesday.
So I think that was Tuesday. So Oregon got that way worse than we did. The red stuff. Like if you saw some of the photos and videos going around on Twitter, it looked like. Do you remember? You know what it looks like in Breath of the Wild when like you tick over, like the blood moon, and all the enemies respawn and stuff. It looked like that. Like everything was just red. So
that's what it was like here all day on.
That was Tuesday.
I guess it was Tuesday.
And then Wednesday was the day that I don't know. You're like what, 8-10 miles south of here?
Yeah, 8 or 9 miles south.
I don't know how it was for you, but I got up. So I woke up pretty early on Wednesday, like 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Get up. I'm in here drinking my coffee. It's usually dark. 7 a.m. rolls around. 8 a.m. rolls around. 9, 10. Still just as dark.
So
outside.
Our street lights were on all day on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Like all of them.
Yes.
When I went out in the front yard, it was dusk. It was like late dusk, pretty much at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
That's about right, I would say. Like until about noon, for like most of the morning, I would say it was like about the brightness of a full moon outside, or just a little more.
Yeah, like a really bright full moon.
Yeah. Like it was pitch black in this house. Like, and I posted a little video in our Discord of my living room, and I couldn't see shit in my living room without any lights on.
We had to turn on all the lights, and my daughter was so freaked out by the whole thing that she moved her desk into her bedroom and shut the curtains and shut the door.
That's smart.
So she was just like, I just stayed up really late tonight, Dad.
Yeah. Well, why stop there, man? Like build the full on the bed fort, build the pillow fort, and just get all the way under there.
I mean, it's I couldn't sleep. I was so messed up on that night from like just not knowing what time it was all day that I ended up going to sleep at like 5 a.m. I think. Wow. I just basically was laying there. I watched TV. I read. I watched more TV. I read. I played some games. I read. And I finally fell asleep. It's weird. The next day was also like, had it not been for the blood sky the day before, the day after would have been also very bad, but it was yellow.
Yeah, that was yesterday. That was... Yeah, it was brighter, but it was so yellow outside. It's just crazy. I don't think that is, the human psyche is not built to see stuff like this.
Well, it's interesting. I read a thing yesterday in ProPublica, maybe, I can't remember, about like why we're having this kind of wildfires. And basically the TLDR is for the last 40 years, we haven't been letting anything burn. If it doesn't get out of, like, we don't do any controlled burns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
Because occasionally they get out of control and they burn stuff down and then somebody's liable.
Great.
Is what it seems like the TLDR is.
This is way more mundane and annoying than I expected.
Yeah, no. I mean, there's obviously a climate change component too, because we're in the middle of 10 years of drought or we're at the end of 10 years of drought, which is taking a situation that was already bad and turning it into a tinderbox, basically. But like the strategy for fixing this is that you burn small patches in large checkerboards so that there are some natural fire breaks and stuff. And anyway, yeah, it's a mess.
Is there anything that's not a mess right now?
You know, it's not a mess. In-home game streaming.
Oh, great. Let's talk about something truly important.
I gotta roll the music first, though. Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
Brad.
How you doing, Brad?
I'm okay. Doing okay. How are you?
I would describe myself as doing the best that I can.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's an optimistic, uplifting, positive spin.
Well, when you're inside my head, it doesn't feel that optimistic, but things are going great.
Hey, fake it till you make it.
Yeah, something like that. Look, I am I am very grateful right now. It's funny. We were talking about this in the house the other day, but like this is the first time since my daughter was born that everybody in the house is like into the same games. Because Gina is like an occasional gamer. Like she'll play if there's a new Burnout or a new Need for Speed. She might dip into that a little bit.
Those are core games.
Yeah, but like this year, since the quarantine started with Animal Crossing and Fall Guys and Tony Hawk, there's a bunch of games that like we're all playing, my daughter included, which has been like it's really cool watching my kid like be into a dead genre game like Tony Hawk in the same way that I was for 10 years from like 1998 until 2007 or whatever. Right. Like it's good to know that like she likes that, even though it's not like the new hotness. It makes me happy.
Vindicates your old man memories. That sounds like a nice way to maybe remove a little bit of the friction when you're stuck inside for months on end with the same people.
It definitely helps that we all have stuff to do both together and apart. And like having like a little meditative Animal Crossing practice every day has been really good. Like what are you looking for? Oh, your blue roses finally grew. That's amazing. Congratulations. And I cannot wait for animal practice coming fall 2021. God, what if you're like a doctor for the Animal Crossing animals?
Ooh.
Well, this is totally off topic and it's not about game streaming at all. But on the Animal Crossing front, like my daughter has made a bunch of alt characters now that she's built houses for that are like doctors and teachers and librarians. And she's building like a little town full of people to service the needs of the animals.
Wait, do you mean alt player characters?
She's making alt player characters. Okay. She was like, how do I make other accounts on my Switch? Huh. And I was like, oh, you do it like this. She's like, what do you want to do? I'll show you later. And so she has like a teacher version of her and a librarian version of her and a doctor version of her.
And that's how you very quickly found out how many accounts you can make on a Nintendo Switch.
Well, we haven't reached that limit yet, but I'm sure it's going to anger me when it happens. But yeah, it's like having an open-ended game like that with a kid who's cooped up all the time and has a lot of free time and can't leave the house at all right now, even to go in the backyard. She's impressing me with her ability to find new ways to play with something that's relatively structured.
That's innovative, and that's also very community-minded.
Yeah,
when you first mentioned being a doctor in Animal Crossing, it just made me envision what the Tom Nook HMO would be like.
Look, Tom Nook gives interest-free loans to strangers.
Now I'm just angry, so we should move
on. So we were talking a couple weeks ago about streaming games.
Yes,
but
not like you think.
Yeah, we're not talking about xCloud. Yes. We're not talking about Stadia. We're not talking about GeForce Now.
Yes.
I mean, we can. They all use the same basic technology. But if you have a Steam machine, a PC running games, or a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, you can play whatever you want kind of anywhere in the world in a lot of cases.
Seems like it's getting to that point. But yeah, talking about the underlying tech is actually, I mean, granted, that's kind of what we do on this podcast. But like that's kind of what I'm excited to talk about here, because until the last, 12 months or so, I wanted nothing to do with playing games remotely.
So I've been using a Steam Link off and on to play like single player games in the living room for probably since maybe 6 months after the Steam Link came out. I can't remember when they released that. I didn't look that up. It was like 2015, maybe.
Steam Link box.
2014, 2015.
When you search for Steam Link now, it just pulls up that the app
thing.
Was it like 2015? Maybe
it seems right.
right.
It was around the time I left tested.
Okay.
It wasn't a great experience at launch unless you were on wired.
Right.
And then some stuff changed with the way the graphics drivers work. So and it suddenly got pretty good.
And maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse here, but that's exactly what I want to know about. I want to know what changed, because when my early experiences with this stuff, and also just conceptually, like, I don't want artifacting. I don't want latency. I just want to play a game processed locally on the box under my TV or next to my desk. And like, leave me alone, goddammit. I'm shaking my cane at you right now. You know what I mean? But at some point, and we'll get into some of these, like the Parsecs and the Moonlights and so forth, like it got really good.
So in the old days when you would try to do this, it would just capture your game screen like OBS does if it captures the whole display, which is not particularly latency friendly. So you would have a good, you'd take a game where you already have a little bit of input latency, which we talked about a lot last week, and then you would add Actually, we didn't talk about that at all, did we?
Well,
did we talk about reflex a
little
bit?
Did. Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Okay. But then you add more latency for capturing the frames as they're going through the frame buffer, and then you have video encoding latency, and it basically didn't work even if you had hardware video encode. It was
that's just too many steps, right?
Yeah, well, it was for games like a Bethesda RPG is a great example, because like you can play a Bethesda RPG with 50 milliseconds of input lag and you're fine.
Yes.
But if you try to play Spelunky or Dead Cells or something that require or like a Ghost of Tsushima or something that requires some timing, Dark Souls, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happened is NVIDIA, when they started doing streaming with the Shield devices, using GeForce Experience as a server, added this frame buffer capture. So it's NVFBC, and basically it captures the frame buffer, the last place that the picture goes before it gets blasted out to the monitor, and sends it without hitting OpenGL or Direct3D, without any of the without involving any of the other APIs. And you can do it regardless of the driver of the application. So like if you have, say, a Windows render model, the Metro app style games like Gears of War 5 was on the PC, it can grab that even if it's using Vulkan or whatever.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's just something that the application ties into.
So it's application independent, API independent.
Right.
It only works in full screen mode.
Okay.
So because for a while in the olden times, your best bet was to actually run your game in a window if you wanted the Steam Link to work, because of the way it was capturing. That was when it was either using IFR, NVIDIA IFR, which I don't know what IFR stands for, but it was basically it could capture a single application in a window. It required a little bit. It was a little fiddlier in terms of some apps just wouldn't work because of the way they were rendering the frames. And that's how Steam does windowed mode applications on the Steam Link and the Steam Link apps now. But yeah, it's like, it's not, there's a lot of rocket science here, in that it is a very complicated, difficult thing that people are doing. But for somebody who wants to have a PC in their office and not hooked up to their TV, it's pretty easy to set up these days.
So what's the best way to approach this? Like I guess we could start with the older solutions for this, but they're kind of profoundly obsolete at this point, I think. Like there is the original Steam Link box, and like the PS4's got remote play, but the PS4 came out 7 years ago. You know what I mean?
But so the PS4 works because it has hardware encode. PS4 and Xbox One work because they have hardware encode for H.264.
Right. It's the same devices. It's the same hardware that they use to constantly record your gameplay, right?
Exactly.
In fact, I think the PS4, at least, maybe the Xbox as well, like straight up pops up a message. I want to say it. Or maybe it's buried in there somewhere, but there is some messaging somewhere when you use remote play on PS4. It says like, hey, game recording will be disabled while you're using remote play.
Yeah. And like, so remote play, I know people who like stream and don't have a capture card use PS4 or Xbox remote play. And to set those up, basically you download an app, or if you're on a Windows 10 machine, you have the Xbox app built in, and you have to connect them to the device, and then you can just fire it up remotely, and it pops up in a little window. The game pops up in a little window on your desktop.
Yeah, and it works.
It's fine.
It's been useful for me to have that on the PS4 occasionally to do something I need to do while I'm in here working in the other room. But like, there's enough artifacting, there's enough latency, even over a wired network, that I would never use it for something I truly cared about.
So it's funny. I've used it to do like screenshots and stuff like that when I need to take some screenshots of VR games. Yeah, it's way easier than the built-in tools. It's more late. It adds more latency than plugging into a capture card and trying to play in a PC window, which
is noticeable.
Like God of War, I had trouble playing. Spider-Man was fine because the timing windows were pretty generous on that. But something that you need to do parries or something on, like you couldn't play Sekiro on the PS4 streaming.
Yeah, and like I assume that that's really no more complicated than it's just 7-year-old hardware, and probably the software stack has probably not evolved that much in that time either, right?
My guess would be that there's no equivalent of the frame buffer grab.
Yeah.
For this, because I mean, if you think about it, it's not something like the other side of this is that from a technology perspective, Wi-Fi, when these consoles came out, wasn't good enough to do this. And they're all 802.11n consoles. Yes. I mean, I guess the Pro and the X are AC, maybe.
I actually don't know about that. I'd be surprised if they are. I could look it up if we really care, but
I mean, but the point is that
it's in on the Pro.
Yeah. So then the Series X might be AC, but realistically, you're not going to have the performance on end to stream. So the other thing is you need to have fast internet, and in most people's houses, that's going to be AC wireless, which is fine for 1080p streaming. If you want to go higher, and there are some options now that'll let you do 4K. By the way, when we tested Moonlight, were you doing 4K or were you doing 1080p?
1080p.
Okay. You can do 4K with Moonlight now.
Huh, wow.
Which is bonkers. Right? The 4K up to 120 frames per second, I think.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. It's an interesting, like you can have a really compelling gaming experience where the hardware lives in your garage and like it doesn't make noise or stuff in your house, and you just have this remote gaming thing that lives someplace else in your house.
That sounds kind of nice. Like, right up until you have to go plug a USB stick into it for something.
I mean, look, I was going to say the downside of all of this is that at some point you're going to have to probably get up and walk into the other room and mash some buttons because it's a pain in the ass.
It's never foolproof.
It adds a fair amount of jank to your gaming experience, which a lot of people don't want.
Yeah. So before we get into the modern solutions, can we talk about the original Steam Link just a little bit?
Yeah, it's a cool box.
Is it?
I still have two of them plugged in.
Okay, so like this is very self-serving, but the main reason I want to bring it up is that I bought one for like $12 a year or two ago, a couple years ago.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Still sitting in the drawer.
Yeah.
And
your house is like you have an HDMI cable.
I do. Yeah. Like I bought it because it was $12, not because I have a use case for it, but that's kind of why I bring it up. Yeah. Like it doesn't seem like there's that much to do with an old Steam Link. Like there's not a big homebrew scene for it. Like, is it still usable for its original purpose, or
yeah,
like, are you going to benefit from, I guess maybe that's the real question. Like, are they able to update the client software on it, and will that allow you to benefit from like improvements to latency and stuff? Or is the hardware itself old enough that it's kind of hamstrung in that way?
So they're continuing to update it. I get updates every once in a while for it. It is limited by the hardware in that it does not have hardware support for H.265.
Okay.
Or if it does have hardware support for H.265, it doesn't. There's no Linux drivers for whatever the hardware is that do that. But at 1080p 60, which is I think where it caps out, it's really good at 1080p stuff. Like okay. I have them hooked up in my living room and bedroom. I put Moonlight on it so I can do the GeForce streaming and get access to some other games that aren't necessarily on Steam a little bit easier. I think it's fine. Like that said, I definitely would not go like third party because Valve stopped selling them.
Right.
Like they stopped selling them in favor of having apps that are built into the TVs or available on like Apple TV and stuff like that.
Yeah. Like you can get Steam. So it's the same name, right? Isn't the branding is still Steam Link even for the new app?
Yeah.
Like you can even get it for Raspberry Pi. Like they publish it for all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So I was going to say the solution, if you want a box and not an app that's built into your set-top box or your TV, if you don't want to do that, then the solution isn't to go to eBay and buy a Steam Link. It's to go buy a Raspberry Pi 3 or 4 and use that.
Yeah, I think I Googled earlier just out of curiosity, and I think they go for more now than they did at launch, just because they're scarce enough and there's zero reason to spend that money.
No, I mean, the box it's a nice little box. It doesn't have any active cooling, so it's quiet.
Yeah.
But no, just get a Raspberry Pi and buy a nice case and use that instead.
Yeah.
You'll have more like the hardware in these newer Raspberry Pis is more capable anyway.
Yes, by far.
Yeah. So like when these things started, remember the PlayStation TV, because you could stream from a PS4 to that too.
Could you? PlayStation TV. God, why am I blanking on what a PlayStation TV was? That
PlayStation TV is the Vita without.
That was also the thing that played Vita games on the TV. Yes.
Well, it played Vita games that didn't require the back touch. I think was the limiter.
Now I remember.
Yeah, so you can do PlayStation TV, another bad set-top box that you shouldn't try to find and buy one at this point. But the point was, back when this started, you needed a wired Ethernet to wherever you wanted to work, and with AC, kind of you don't anymore. Like AC is pretty good. I have one wired setup with a Steam Link box and an Apple TV in the living room, one wireless in the bedroom. That's just the Steam Link, and they're both fine. Like the wireless is definitely not as good. You occasionally get a little bit of blocky artifacting if like something bad happens to the Wi-Fi, but for the most part, it works just fine.
I continue to be so jealous of people in houses who don't have catastrophic Wi-Fi pollution.
It is nice. The AC stuff handles the catastrophic Wi-Fi pollution better than any of the previous versions of Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Because there's still a dozen, like I see a dozen APs for my house when I fire up my scanner thing.
Only a dozen.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, but the solution, if you like the Steam Link, is probably like Steam Link is great for games that run on Steam. It's hard to run whether you're using the box or the app. It's hard to run things from the Epic Store. It's hard to run things that you buy from the Microsoft Store that come with Game Pass. It's hard to run stuff from Origin.
Can you not? I could be totally off base here, but I feel like I had seen, because you can add custom games to Steam. You can just say, hey, like point yourself at this executable, and now you're a Steam game. You know what I mean? Like I thought I had seen people say you could just add games like that to Steam and then run them through Steam Link that way.
Sometimes you can.
Oh, not always. Okay.
Not always. So it depends on what kind of DRM they require. You know how you can make like a file shortcut in Windows to launch a Steam game by like calling a specific URI. It's like Steam : and then there's a long series of digits, numbers. There isn't necessarily an Epic equivalent for that, and there definitely isn't a Microsoft equivalent for that.
Okay.
So if the Epic Store needs to be running in order to make the game work, and you have to launch it through the Epic Store for the DRM, that won't work. But there is this thing called GlowSC that's like a little bit of a wrapper. You can download it. It's a tiny tool. Basically, you point it at the thing that you want to run, and you tell Steam, and it builds a container for it that Steam will recognize.
Oh, interesting.
And that makes it work. And that even works for Microsoft Store games.
Oh, wow,
so Game
cool.
Pass stuff works there too.
And the spelling on that is GLOSC.
GLOSC.
To be clear.
Unfortunately, I've been using GlowSC for 2 years now, probably. There are a handful of settings in there, and my process, like there's no rhyme or reason to which games need which settings to work.
Great.
So you often find yourself in okay, I'm going to make a shortcut. I'm going to add it to Steam. Does this one work? No. Okay. Kill that shortcut. Let's change this setting and see if changing this setting makes it work. Does that work? Yeah. Okay. One more time. And then you get on like the third try.
So it's free software.
It is free software.
That's what you're saying.
It's doing something that the system is not designed to do.
Yes. Sidebar, just because you mentioned it a minute ago. When did we move from URL to URI? What does the I stand for? And are they the same thing? I mean, I know what a URL. In fact, I know what they both are, but like
URI is more general. URL is
for?
only for HTTPS. I think it's indicator, but I'm not sure. Universal Resource Indicator, maybe.
Okay. Googling that is way harder than
Universal Resource Identifier.
Uniform Resource. Okay, I had to get past all the University of Rhode Island stuff.
I see. Me too.
Also, every time I see URI, I just think of some kind of urinary tract infection or something.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So URI is a collective. Is the URL is the subset of a URI.
Okay. Oh, yeah. There's also such a thing as URN.
Yeah.
The Uniform Resource
URN
Name. Who's on first?
Interesting.
The ISBN is a form of URN? Or no,
wow.
I'm sorry. ISBN numbers can be encapsulated in URN. Nobody cares about this except me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look,
a URL is a type of URI.
Brad, we have a patron level that we can get you to that we'll do an episode just on URIs and URNs if you back the pod.
What level do I need to back? Okay, we'll talk about it.
We'll have to talk about it offline.
I would love to become a supporter of this podcast.
It's a great podcast. Everybody should.
So I hear.
Okay, so Steam Link, pretty good if you buy all your stuff on Steam. If you want to play other stuff, maybe look at some other options.
Yeah, so that was my question.
The TLDR.
So is Moonlight the way to go? Is that where we should start?
So Moonlight is just a client for the GeForce Game Stream protocol. Okay. So, which is a private NVIDIA thing. It only works if you have an NVIDIA video card.
I was going to say that immediately disqualifies AMD owners.
Yeah. So that's the bad news. The good news is I think it's the best experience that I've had for in-home.
I mean, the big question is it fully inclusive of Steam? Like it'll run anything on Steam?
You can open up Steam Big Picture from inside it. It loads that up as a default option.
Okay, so and it works with just about anything else?
You can also load up the desktop so that anything you can launch from the desktop you can use. It doesn't use the Steam controller interface usually. Like it shows up to Steam as an Xbox. The controller you have plugged into the Steam Link or your Raspberry Pi or whatever, your PC shows up as an Xbox 360 controller, I think, no matter what.
Okay.
It works really well.
Yeah. So I like 45 minutes ago was the first time I ever tried it. You had me connect to your machine. We played some Samurai Gun.
Mm-hmm.
I played a little bit.
You kicked my ass at Samurai Gun.
Yeah, I was the connecting player.
Yes.
I mean, I wasn't going to brag or anything, but
no, it's fine.
So we played some of that. I ran around in Dead Cells a little bit, and not to get ahead of ourselves, I came in here all excited to talk about how good Parsec is. And then
Parsec's really good.
And then I tried Moonlight, and it is at least as good. Like I was kind of shocked. I was like, oh wow, maybe just streaming games remotely is fucking shockingly good now.
I mean, I think that's like my experience with this stuff over the last couple of months. We haven't talked about Steam Remote Play Together, which is kind of streaming, but not. I mean, it is streaming, but it's a different use case. It's like streaming multiplayer games that are designed to be played on a couch together.
Well, so that's what Parsec is. So those are actually directly analogous. But I guess we'll get to that.
Well, so let's talk about them in a minute then.
Yeah.
Okay. So Game Stream is a thing that lives on top of the GeForce experience. If you open up the GeForce experience and you go over to that tab, go into the settings and you go to, I think it's the Shield tab. You can flip a switch that says, hey, I want to stream games. It knows what works really well by default. That's part of the NVIDIA's co-marketing program. You can add anything you want, including the Windows desktop. It automatically has a Steam Big Picture mode shortcut. So like I was able to load up Tony Hawk 1+2, and after a little bit of fiddling to get the controller working, I can just play it on any TV in my house now, which is awesome. Yeah. Samurai Gun just worked. If you have mouse and keyboards hooked up to the endpoints, you can play stuff that uses a mouse and keyboard. I played some Surgeon Simulator the other day. It like I said, it does work with like games like Microsoft Store games that you can't find the executable anywhere because it's buried in the program.
You did that on purpose.
Anywhere.
I'm not going to take the bait.
You already took the bait.
Oh, I'm rescinding it.
This is the bait taken. But like those games, like when you download Gears of War 5 from the Microsoft Store because you have Game Pass, that it's just hidden it's in some folder that you as the user on your computer do not have access to.
Are not allowed to access on your own goddamn computer.
Continues to offend the living shit out of me.
Yeah, I just gave up on it. I was like, you know what? Fine, fuck it. You can have your protected system folder. I don't care what's in there. Just let me play the game. But yeah,
that's how they win, Brad.
UWP is weird. It's a weird little app basket. It's a little bundle of things that you can't touch.
Yeah, it's an app basket.
Yeah.
So one of the neat things about so a couple of things. On all of these, you want to turn on NVFBC if you have an NVIDIA card.
You have to enable that manually?
On Steam, you do. On Moonlight and GameStream, you do not.
Sorry, what was the acronym?
NVFBC.
That's the front buffer capture.
Frame buffer capture.
You wrote front.
Capture.
I'm sorry, you wrote front buffer capture.
It's both. It means either one.
It is okay.
Yeah.
So that's a setting in Steam. You have to. Why would they not just? That seems like something they would just turn on at runtime.
I don't know if they can detect whether it's available on the cards without like comparing to a list of the hardware.
That's another question. Is this only on recent GeForces or is this on any that are still in use? Do you know?
It works on both of my machines. One has a 1080 and one has a 2080.
Okay.
So I don't know about prior to that, but it works on those two for sure.
Okay.
And they didn't. I looked for documentation about this, but it's not like a spec sheet thing that that normal people care about. So, I would be interested to hear if people have older cards where the cutoff is. The Moonlight is an open source project that uses the same protocol as the NVIDIA Shield, which is a series of hardware devices. They have tablets that I don't think they actually make the tablets anymore, but they have set-top boxes that are really super capable. It's like a super capable Apple TV, basically. The Moonlight is if you want to put it on a Raspberry Pi. There's a Steam Link version of the Moonlight client, which I've been using. You can put it on your laptop. You can run it on your phone. It's everywhere. So the initial pairing stuff for all of this is more or less the same. Basically, you say you want to connect to a server from the client. It either gives you a number, it gives you a place to type in a number, and then you run in and look at what the number is. You put the corresponding number in on one of the computers, and you get it from the other one.
That is something to know ahead of time, is that it does require a little bit of pre-planning or forethought. Like,
yeah, in
a hypothetical world where like business travel happened, and
you want to pair before you leave the house,
right? Like if you happen to have your work laptop with you and you're halfway across the country, you can't just install Moonlight and do it on a lark. You have to have paired that machine with your host before you left town.
And in the case of Moonlight, you also have to open some ports if you want to do it across the internet as a general rule.
Interesting.
They have a tool that kind of helps along with that process and helps you know what UPnP ports you need and all that stuff.
Oh, well, maybe we'll get to that. That might be an area where Parsec does have a leg up on Moonlight then.
I think that is definitely the case.
Because we have not had to do that so far.
So let's see, you pair it. And the neat thing about Moonlight is all of the settings are on the client side. So like on Steam, in order to change bitrate and stuff like that, to do what your Wi-Fi can handle or what your network's capable of, with Parsec, with Moonlight, I can lay in bed and change the settings and see if it works, and then change the settings down a little bit more and then see if it works, and change the settings down a little bit more and see if it works.
Yeah, I was able to adjust the bitrate. I was quote unquote connected to your instance the whole time, but I just in between games, I quit out of Dead Cells and then I went and boosted the bitrate by a factor of like 3. I went and tripled the bitrate and then immediately launched another game, and it just worked seamlessly. It was nice.
Well, so in my experience, a bitrate in the house of like 30 megabits is like, I can't tell much of a difference above that at 1080p.
That's probably fine. I just went to 150 because that was the highest it supported, and I wanted to see
it went to 150?
Yeah, I boosted it all the way up there. I mean, granted, we both have gigabit up and down, and you live like 10 miles away, so like these are pretty ideal network conditions.
It's the only way we could do better than that between houses is if we ran an Ethernet cable and you live next door.
Yes. Well, yeah, like you said, even at a fifth of that, a bit rate of a fifth of that or so, it's extremely high quality.
There's a lot of settings as always, but for the most part, you can set it up. Like I said, it passes an Xbox controller, passes whatever you have as an Xbox controller to the client, to the host machine, and then you configure it to work. And the challenge on Moonlight comes often with the interaction between the NVIDIA Game Stream gamepad capture and Steam hardware, like the Steam controller support.
I forget why I did. Oh, I know why I did it. I was taking screenshots in a game. So I set up, and this is a feature that I'm not super familiar with, but I set up a custom profile for my Xbox controller in Steam. Mm-hmm. I don't know how long that's been in there. It kind of
5 years it came out with the Vive.
Really?
Yeah. They didn't expose it for normal controllers for a couple of years after that, but you can get to it.
Okay, that would explain it. It's the thing that lets you kind of remap the buttons of the controller at the Steam level. Lets you bind, in fact, like full on like keyboard shortcuts to different buttons, stuff like that. Anyway, it lets you use like a PS4 controller with Steam that then shows up to the game as an Xbox 360 controller without using like DS for Windows or something like that. A lot of cool stuff like that. But I had set a controller up to take screenshots with a certain button, so that's why I had that old custom profile loaded. And where the point is that seemed to confuse Moonlight enough that it couldn't see my controller because that's the running theory of why it couldn't find my controller.
I think they fight over it, and you end up in a weird situation where like for Marvel Avengers, for example, the other night, I had to turn off Steam controller support for that game in order to see the Moonlight controller when I was playing the game. The other thing is both Steam Link and Moonlight will let you like use the right stick on the controller and the right trigger as a mouse, as a mouse analog. Yeah. It is absolutely maddening. It is one of the worst UI experiences I've ever had on all fronts.
Okay.
So if you are going to do this and it is too far to walk back and forth between the two computers, maybe consider getting a wireless mouse and keyboard, like one of those. Like Microsoft and Logitech both make wireless keyboard / trackpad things that are like $25.
Oh, you're talking just to do the minimum required input to make things go, not to actually play a game on? Yeah, I've got one of those.
Yeah, it's purely for interacting with the computer in the living room, not for playing games.
Yes. Yeah. I think the K400 is the Logitech I've got. They may be on it. There's probably a newer model at this point. Mine is very old. But
yeah, it's a useful thing to have anyway for misters and they're cheap and other things. Yeah, and they're totally. Like $25.
Yeah.
So that's Moonlight. Before we jump to Parsec, which is I think a little bit of a different thing. If you want to know how to make this stuff better, run a cable is the first thing. Like if you can run an Ethernet cable, you're going to have a better experience with Wi-Fi. I think no matter what. Yeah. Hardware acceleration on the host has to be on for this to be playable in my experience. And ideally you do the GPU video acceleration, which basically gives you instant video encodes. But if you don't have that, then the CPU acceleration is pretty good on Intel. At least I haven't tried the AMD stuff.
Do you have any, not to digress, but I'm totally going to digress. Any tips to people who can't like run cables through walls for running cables?
Powerline's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I meant physically running an Ethernet because I accept nothing but the best
around the edges. So if you can put holes in the floor or the baseboard, little tiny pinholes, you can get these they're like cable tack downs.
Yeah, the little nail
plastic
things.
Yeah, it's like a little plastic loop with that just holds the cable against the floor. Comcast used to always put them when they would run a cable along a wall in your house.
Yeah.
You can get a box of 100 of them at the hardware store for like $5. And
those are good.
That'll let you do what you want. You can also get flat Ethernet is the other option.
So I just ordered one of those for a completely different purpose, but I got a couple of flat Ethernet cables on the way right now, actually.
I mean, an important part of how Ethernet of the way Cat 5 and Cat 6 works has to do with the twists of the sub pairs inside the wires. So I assume they work. I haven't used one. I know that a lot of people who have people use them to run like Ethernet and HDMI up to their TV that's mounted on the wall so that it's flush, and you can just kind of put a little bit of paint and some stuff over it so it looks like a weird bulge in the wall rather than a cable going up there. So
you know what? They said the same thing about rounded IDE cables back in the day. Well, actually, technically they said the opposite.
Yeah, we always said don't use rounded IDE cables.
Well, no, but I mean, that was going the opposite direction. Those started out flat and became round, and now what we're talking about is going from round to flat.
That's true.
That's the opposite direction. But
did you ever try to make a flat IDE cable round?
Fuck no. I saw people literally took the razor blade and cut
down the stripes,
cut the insulation between the fuck that. No.
We did that at Maximum PC once just to see if we could do it. 5 people made them and one of them worked, as I recall.
That's not a great success rate, I'm going to say.
I mean, they were free. They come with the motherboard. So.
But I did buy a good number of rounded IDE cables, and
they were bad.
They all worked fine. I never had a problem.
Well, no, the problem with them was so if you were going to buy rounded IDE cables, my stance was always that you should just get the ones that were only 2 ends. Because like an IDE cable, you could have 3 plugs on.
Yeah.
But that middle plug was useless because all it did was jack up the whole cable, make it really wide and unwieldy.
Sure.
And probably you weren't going to be able to get it where you wanted it to be anyway. So you might as well just take that one out and buy a 2-end one. And then you have a nice clean round cable.
That's fair.
Yeah. Turn on the NVFBC if you're using Steam because that stuff is dope. It's really good. And if everything you have on the video card and on the client supports H265, you should do that because you're going to have better image quality with a different kind of artifact than you will with H264 that you don't notice as much.
Sure.
I think that's it. The Glow SC thing is important for playing non-Steam games on Steam.
Yeah.
And the other thing is on the game stream stuff with NVIDIA, you can add unsupported games. So if you go to that games tab, the shield tab in the settings page, you can go down to the bottom and hit the add button and add anything you want. And that is very convenient as well.
Good to know.
Or like I said, just have the desktop and click on whatever, type it in with your $25 keyboard and mouse.
Braver than I am.
What's up with Parsec, man? I'm curious about this. I haven't used it at all.
So like I said, I came in here ready to just extol the virtues of its low latency, high video quality backend tech. But then again, like I just said, when we tried Moonlight earlier, it seems pretty much just as good. Yeah. So it seems more the case that just this technology has evolved to the point that it's quite good now. I guess the biggest difference with Parsec is it's much more focused on enabling multiplayer. It's kind of what Steam Game Stream does. Like let me back up. Like philosophically, Moonlight is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's more geared toward you playing your own games off of your hardware somewhere else, right?
I think that is correct.
That's the biggest use case of Moonlight.
Somewhere else in that case can be in your house,
somewhere else in your house or on the road,
out in the world.
Yes. Parsec's intended use case is more for multiplayer. It's more for allowing, co-op of local games remotely, that kind of thing.
So like if you want to play Getting Over It, not Getting Over It, the men stacking game.
Mount Your Friends.
Mount Your Friends.
Yes, if you want to
play Mount Your Friends.
If you want to remotely mount your friends,
yes,
you can do that. I mean,
I think that's a different episode, actually.
For sure. The best real world example is apparently the fighting game community is using Parsec quite a bit for remote tournaments right now.
Really?
Since they can't get together. Yeah. In fact, that is probably the biggest endorsement you could have.
Holy shit. I didn't know that.
If the FGC has deemed it latency appropriate for, these are not necessarily talking about Evo. I'm not sure what the stakes are, but if they're willing to use this in competitive situations, you can assume it's pretty good.
So it's one person hosting and then both the players are connecting so that nobody has host advantage?
That's a good question. I mean, in that case, wouldn't you want a third party to host?
That's what I'm saying. Have a third party host and
Yes.
Is this for old games like emulated Street Fighter 2 and stuff like that?
I haven't looked too deeply into it. I've just seen some people saying that the FGC types are using this for remote tournaments recently. But
that's awesome. I didn't know that.
So it's client software that you download or client and host software. I guess one of the bigger disadvantages over something like Moonlight is you have to make an account with them. It's a very Discord sign up process. You get a username with a kind of a hash, a number appended to it. So then you have a friends list. You have to add people to your friends list. You are going through their central authentication to use it. You can't.
Yeah, whereas Moonlight is completely decentralized and self-hosted.
Moonlight is a full-on open source. Moonlight has a GitHub repo. It is that.
You do still need the NVIDIA GeForce Experience stuff to use Moonlight.
Yeah. But what I mean is it's free and open in the way that open source software tends to be, whereas Parsec, which is a commercial product, and you full on have a paid corporate option for Parsec, is much more, it's account driven is what I'm saying.
It's a business.
You have to give them your email address or an email address to use it is what I'm getting at.
I don't want to.
Yes, I did. Anything that makes me want to or makes me sign up gives me some pause, but it's worked really well for us so far. I assume that having an account and having to go through their central backend, whatever it is probably why we haven't had to worry about any port forwarding with this.
That's my guess is that is what you're paying for, is not having to fool with ports.
Well, to be clear, the paid account is a corporate thing. I'm not sure what the benefits are, but as an end user, you can use it for free.
Oh, so it's probably what you're getting with the corporate account is uptime and stuff like that, right?
I could look it up. Fast.
No, dude. What they're doing is they're using that to do game events, and now they can't take over the Clift Ballroom and bring people in.
I think you're right. That is totally probably how they're monetizing. Is they're.
Well, yeah, I saw a press release that I think that Ubi event when they did.
Yeah, I would believe that.
Yeah.
In fact, I know that. Actually, I know some companies have been doing remote press events, remote preview stuff with Parsec specifically. I just looked it up. You can pay them $10 a month as an end user to get stuff like a better color space. You get 444 if you're familiar with what that means instead of 422.
Is it better than 422? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's
there's two more in each of the last two columns.
It says better color, pen and tablet support, dual streaming, screen switching, some features like that if you want to pay, but that's not really what we're here to talk about. But they really talk a big game about their tech. They have, I linked it in the show notes here. They have a page on their streaming tech. We don't take shortcuts. So
they have a Millennium Falcon. It's got to be fast.
They say their core technology suite is built in cross-platform C. They devised their own peer-to-peer networking protocol called BUD, or Better User Datagrams. I appreciate that they put this information out there.
Wait,
I'm not here trying to sing their praises so much as I just like when a company shows you what's behind the curtain.
I'm disappointed. I thought this product was named after the TI-99 4A classic Parsec, not we can make the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
Let's not.
I'm just sad.
Try to keep nerd references to a minimum on this podcast if possible. We make our own nerd references around here. Thank you.
TI-99/4A parsec is a fantastic game, Brad.
That's a good reference. I'll give you that. A good reference is when you have like a maybe 50% success rate of somebody getting it or not.
The Dennis Miller ratio.
You need to make it mysterious enough that some people haven't heard of it and they're like, oh man, he's in the know. What is that? I got to go look that up. I am not cool for not knowing what that game is. Anyway, I pulled this up because they quote in here that they have what they call a 97% NAT traversal success rate.
That's really good.
So that must be, I assume that's why you're not having to fiddle with port forwarding and stuff like that to get this to work. It's just it's breaching people's NATs without assistance.
My router is the NAT buster right now because it doesn't support UPnP and it doesn't support loopback. So like there's a ton of stuff that just doesn't work right because AT&T blows.
Sounds like maybe you need to bring a fancy router into your life. I remember a time. I'm not going to name any names. I remember someone denigrating the fancy router on the Discord.
I just didn't want. It was a Patreon post. I just didn't want to have. I don't need more complexity in my life. I need less complexity in my life.
The shitty routers come for us all eventually.
Fucking shitty routers.
You try to do enough cool stuff with your internet connection. Sooner or later, your shitty router is going to get in the way, and then it's time for the fancy router.
I mean, fair. So
anyway,
next month, me building my PF Sense machine.
I'm all for it. They mentioned some latency tests they did on here. I mean, this is on a LAN, but they quoted a 7 millisecond extra latency situation with this over a LAN, which is like
pretty amazing.
Basically nothing. Granted, I don't know what that would be over, even between me and you. I'm sure it will be a little like a handful of more milliseconds.
I mean, we're on different ISPs, so we have to go out to a backbone probably someplace. Right. I wish we could have seen what the end-to-end latency was when you were on the Moonlight connection here.
Yeah, well, we would have had to set some kind of test up. But whatever. I've used this real world. Like I've played games with Vinny in New Jersey from California. I've played games with other people in the Bay Area here. Like we've been using this for quick looks. That's the big one for us.
Yeah.
Is not just to play multiplayer, but you just need to let the other person see what you're doing to talk about it, right? And this has been damn near real time as far as that stuff goes. Like I don't think people can tell the difference now.
I remember when we tried experimenting with that stuff in like 2010, when we were like, let's just do I feel like maybe Vinny and I did a let's see if we can do this remotely test. And it didn't work. Yeah. Like you were 5 seconds behind or something. Yeah. It was ridiculous.
Yes, that stuff pretty bad. But yeah, like the Battletoads quick look we did, I did with Jason was hosting that on his PC and I played it second player, and like video quality and latency, I could barely tell the difference from a local game.
What's the client situation? Is it available for everything?
So that's kind of a bummer. The client is available for Windows, Mac, and Linux, but you can only host from a Windows machine as of right now.
I mean, that makes sense given what you're going to be playing.
For the most part, yeah. I did want to host from a MacBook at one point and was not able to, and that really sucked. But we have weird use cases for this stuff.
So I have a weird question.
Yes.
Is there anybody that's built something that would let me use one of these streaming technologies to play games on, for example, a FPGA-based hardware emulation platform with people that are not sitting in the house with me?
I don't think that exists as of yet, but it's probably possible. There may have, in fact, been people on our Discord in the last couple of days speculating about building exactly that.
I mean, all you would need to do is have set up like a microcontroller as a controller emulator.
Yeah.
And pass the inputs, right?
I wonder,
it's pretty straightforward.
Do you even need that? Could you do that over a network? I mean, obviously you'd have to build that in to the Mister.
I don't know. I kind of just went cross-eyed thinking about this because it's a little weird.
There were totally a couple people in the Mister channel the other day talking about how much access to the Linux subsystem on the Mister you get and whether they could maybe think about implementing something like that.
I will go dig into that.
Yes, anyway.
This is it's an interesting thing. This is one of those examples of a technology that came out and everybody tried it and was like, oh, this kind of sucks. And then over the last 5 years, it's gotten quietly really good.
Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. I still want a new GeForce. I still want to play games locally in my house with hardware sitting by
you're
my
not
feet.
going all xCloud and Stadia next gen, Brad?
No. But when you need it,
Gaikai,
when you're in situations like we're in where we need to record videos of games and get people looking at games in high quality and close to real time, like it's gotten shockingly effective for that.
Look, think about all the money your PC is wasting in electricity playing these games. You could move your PC back into the CBS office where it has a fat internet pipe. Hook it up in there and let the man eat your power bill.
That's right. I don't have to.
Yeah.
I don't pay the power bill in the office.
No, that's free money right there.
That's a good point. I have to think about that.
Think about that.
Just a couple more things I was going to say about Parsec. The front end UI I found has left a lot to be desired in a lot of ways.
How did it compare to the Moonlight front end UI?
Well, so that's another situation where Moonlight definitely looks and feels like open source software. Like it's fine, but it's a little klutzy, I would say.
It does not have the attention to UI and UX that a commercial product typically does.
To be fair, like the look and feel of the Parsec client is totally fine. What I'm talking about is like idiosyncrasies. Like, so the capture happens at either the app or the monitor level. So you can either say only capture the apps I tell you to, or capture everything on the screen. The frustration with the app capture is if you tab out of the app you tell it to capture, it will just go to a generic, like the host is doing something else screen. So that's very problematic. For example, if I want to like capture my Elgato capture window and then tab into OBS to start a recording or whatever, then my client viewers lose my feed, which sucks ass. So you can you can say just like, hey, just stream this entire desktop. But then of course you're sending your whole desktop and all the problems that entails.
Yeah.
When it breaks out the monitors in the monitor list, at least in my case, they all have the exact same name. They all just say generic P&P monitor, so I can't tell which monitor I'm sending people. And
does it tell you which one's one? Like, does it pick the Windows numbers?
Every time we do this, I have to ask whoever's joining me, like, okay, which monitor are you seeing? And most of the time, it's the wrong one, so I have to switch.
Video game or hardcore pornography?
Right, like it's that situation basically. It's there's a few little things like that are pretty frustrating about it. Oh yeah, that's one other thing about Parsec. It has a web client, which I assume you still need a login.
I'm sure.
So I'm sure you still have to make an account to use it, but it's WebRTC based. It says it only works in Chrome. What
if the web client just worked like, remember that chat roulette thing where you would just log into a web page and get connected to some random person?
I miss chat roulette.
What if you could just Parsec into a random person's computer and it's like,
that would be pretty good. Actually,
that would be a disaster, but it would be wonderful.
If you let people opt into it, I guess so they know what they're getting into. Chatroulette.com still exists, apparently. I don't think I should click this button to start it, though.
Chat roulette was amazing until the penis to normal funny things ratio was really high.
That's a shame.
I did get one, like people doing a skit, like they were doing a performance of bad relationship for me while I was watching them. Or maybe they just had a bad Anyway,
Chat roulette is a very Whiskey Media basement thing for me. That was definitely that era. Like I remember.
Oh, yeah.
I think there was one night upstairs in the fishbowl conference room. Everybody was like getting drunk and screwing around on chat roulette.
We were just dragging people on chat roulette for hours. Yeah.
My favorite one was, did you ever see the piano improv guy?
That guy was great.
Yeah. It was.
You mean Ben Folds?
God, sure. This guy was the better Ben Folds.
Ben Folds used to do that too.
Did he really? Like the real Ben did? Really?
That's my understanding. Yeah. Okay. I met the chat roulette improv guy at XOXO one year. Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah. They had him come out and talk.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, he was very cool.
That was a fun era of internet before everything went to shit.
Yeah. The internet used to be really good.
Anyway, there's a web client for Parsec if you just want to get people on and they're not in a position to install the client software or whatever. That's pretty convenient too. But
does it add extra like how?
I don't know. Probably not much. WebRTC is extremely low latency itself, from my understanding.
And it seems like it's only Chrome.
Yes, it is Chrome only for that browser. But we've all been using the installed client, and it's worked fine basically.
That seems like the right choice.
It does install a system service. Full disclosure, but what doesn't these days?
Look,
so does iTunes for that matter. Like
the number of system services I have installed because I have Adobe and Backblaze and Blue Jeans and Zoom and Microsoft Teams touched my computer at some point. So now I'm infested with that nonsense.
Damn it. Wait, you said you uninstalled it.
I did.
Are you saying there's residue?
I assume so. I have not found anything. I just have that software made me feel dirty in a way that software hasn't in a really long time.
Really did not have a good first experience with Microsoft Teams.
That's what everybody's first experience with Microsoft Teams is like.
Yeah. Anyway,
I think that's it on our list for today.
That's the big stuff, I think. Do you have any experience with Rainway at all? That's another one that does this same stuff.
No.
Have you not heard of it?
No, I'd never heard of it before.
I
think you told me about it the other day, and I meant to look it up, and then I didn't.
I'm aware of it. I've never used it, but I just typed it into Google, and Rainway versus Parsec is the first auto result that comes up. So you can safely assume it's pretty similar to that. The one claim to fame that Parsec, that Rainway has that I've noticed is they seem to have a habit of trying to push their app into places where it's not going to fly.
Nope.
Which is to say that they tried to put a Rainway client on the Nintendo Switch.
Oh, how'd that go for them?
And Nintendo was like, nah.
And
that's not going to happen, actually.
A Moonlight client on the Switch would be so good. I'm
trying to remember what happened exactly. I don't know if they fully pushed it into the store or what was going on, but they were very much touting it as play your PC games on your Switch, which of course that would do gangbusters, right? But
yeah, that would be amazing.
I don't remember what happened there. Or maybe they're just advertising that they were going to put it on the Switch, and then Nintendo were like, "No, you're not." There's something along those lines.
So apparently, there's a Moonlight Switch port if you have a homebrew Switch,
hack
Switch.
Yeah.
I remember in the old days of iOS when people would release a file browser that also had MAME embedded in it, so you could play all the MAME ROMs on your.
Of course.
Yeah, those were good times. Yeah. Sneak one in there.
Yes.
Get it past the man.
Those good times couldn't last forever.
So yeah, I guess that's it. If you have questions about this stuff, please send them in to techpod@content.town.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I feel like if I had a TV in a basement someplace, it would be really useful.
Totally. We're in we are in a weird world right now where this stuff is largely hypothetical because nobody's going anywhere. They're sitting right by their PCs and consoles all day.
Look, I'm going to go and tell you, that Marvel Avengers game is a perfect. I just want to play something for 30 minutes and wind down for a little bit at the end of the day. I just go smash stuff and it's fun.
If you play everything on the PC, there is definitely a use case here to just go flop in your living room and play it that way. The last thing I was going to ask just before we get out of here, does any of this stuff tie into the xClouds and Stadias of the world in your mind in any real way? I assume they're using pretty similar technology.
My assumption is that the FBC stuff came about because of the GeForce Now work that was done. I don't know what hardware. I know that the xCloud stuff is running on actual Xbox hardware. I don't know what Stadia is. I can't remember what Stadia is running on. I can't remember if we're running on NVIDIA or ATI or AMD.
I believe it's AMD for their graphics.
Yeah, I thought so too.
I think that's right.
I think all of it works together. This is one of those weird situations. It's like wireless VR hardware. The reason we didn't have wireless VR PC headsets at launch was that no one had ever there would never been a need for a low latency H.264 encoder. Right. And then once there was a need for that, some people figured it out and it's in everything 2 years later. But getting from A to B took time.
So is that really the case here? Is that we finally just hit the tipping point where the tech got good?
I think probably. Yeah.
Okay.
Brains plus problem equals lesser problem.
Oh,
so
funny how it turns out like that.
Yeah.
Last
Shocking,
question,
right?
Real quick. The new consoles being AMD based. Do you expect that there is similar tech to this kind of
I would direct
frame buffer stuff that NVIDIA is doing? They've probably got some equivalent in those boxes, right?
I would be shocked. The only thing I would expect, the only console I'd expect to not have anything like this is the next Switch.
Sure.
Right. Nintendo doesn't care about this. They have portable hardware. So you don't need to you don't need to be able to stream the games.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny. I would love a Moonlight, a port of Parsec or Moonlight or something that lets me play games on the Switch is incredibly compelling.
Sure.
Just shockingly. Yeah.
I get it.
I don't think Nintendo's going to go for it though.
Probably not.
Yeah. So if you have questions, send them in. As always, thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the show.
Yes.
I'm trying to think what was on the Discord this week. I've been really busy and haven't been dipping in that much.
I too.
There was a lot of people talking about the blood sky and sharing photos. And like we had a good conversation the other day about how to actually take the photos. Cause it turns out the phone, one of my favorite things about this is that the phone autocorrects.
Yeah. It was impossible to get an accurate photo that really truly represented the horror of the situation because the phone brightens and desaturates everything. And it just kind of made it look like about half as terrible as it actually was.
This is the problem with computational photography, right? The Halide app, if you're on iOS, I don't know what the Android equivalent lets you do manual exposure stuff, which then fixed the problem.
Okay,
it was just how I was able to take my red sky pictures the other day.
Yeah, it's been interesting on the Discord watching this spread because so this is the second time it's happened in the Bay Area. In the last 6 weeks, we didn't have the red sky
like this before.
No. But I mean, just the confluence of wildfires and heat wave.
Oh yeah,
situation. This is the second time we've had that in the last 6 weeks.
I don't think we're gonna have heat wave this weekend. It's supposed to be cool.
I hope not. But all I'm getting at is that we went through this 6 weeks ago, and now people in Oregon, people in Southern California, people in Washington, I think Nevada's got fires now, right? It's kind of more and more of the Western United States is now in the same boat.
Is bad.
It's a lot. So,
but you know what's great is our patrons.
That's right.
Especially our executive producer tier patrons, Jacob Chappell, Andrew Cotton, and David Allen.
Yes.
We appreciate you guys and everybody else who's supporting the pod.
Yes. Thank you so much. I got to get reading.
I know.
All 1,000 plus of you. I fished out my copy. It was at the bottom of a large stack of books.
Okay, we are at more than 1,000 backers now. Yeah. We appreciate you guys so much,
and they have high expectations that I'm going to read this book. So
you have to read the book.
It's on the nightstand. No choice. It's on the nightstand, ready to go.
I'm in the 6th chapter now. So
wow. Okay,
yeah, it goes fast. It's really good. Yeah. I think you're going to love it, or you're going to really hate it one way or the other.
That seems hard to believe, but who knows? Stranger things have happened, I guess.
I mean, we could have done Dune. That was the other option.
Ooh, I don't know. I got nothing against Dune, but that sounds like a commitment.
Dune's one of the seminal science fiction pieces of the 20th century.
I know that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very good.
It's just more that I know there's a lot of it. But I know I know that after Frank Herbert died, it kind of went off the rails, is my understanding.
No. After the first book, it goes off.
Oh, really?
Each of those books is worse than the ones that come before.
Okay, enough said.
Yeah, avoid, read the first one and be like, that is an amazing book. And then whatever you do, don't pick up any of the other Dune books.
Okay.
That's my advice.
All right, good to know.
As somebody who's read way too many Dune books. I guess next week, I don't know what we're doing. We don't know exactly what we're going to do next week. So we will, you'll find out with us next week.
Yeah.
But thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Have a good week. See you soon, Brad.